Hello and welcome once again to Talkin' Tunes. I am your host, Frank Walsh. Thanks for tuning in today. You might remember where we left off. We were talking to the queen of the Boston blues scene, Holly Harris, and you heard her play with the other guest that I'm going to be introducing in 1 second. He is a gentleman who is a three-peat offender now. Been on the show for the third time. I guess he didn't have enough the other 2 times, so we brought him back for more. He is well known on the blues music scene. He plays all over New England, and he will go where the music is needed. He is a blues aficionado. He plays the harmonica, and he is frequenter at many, many jams. He and Holly have been longtime friends. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you again the Undaunted Professor Harp, Hugh Holmes.
Oh, thanks a lot, Frank.
Welcome back here, Hugh.
Thank you.
I tell you, you and Holly kicked it up on the last show playing a little bit of music, but why don't you catch the folks up a little bit, because we have something very exciting to talk about today. There's going to be some breaking news here, Holly.
That's right.
So catch us up a little bit before we get into the big story of the day.
The big story.
Yeah, big story.
Well, I'm still
Pun intended.
out there trying to keep my guys working. And
Yep.
that's a full-time thing, really, trying
It
to
is.
keep that going. It takes a hell of a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm. But it seems successful. You're out there quite a bit.
Well, I'm still out there, want to get more, though,
Yep.
get what I think is due. But last couple of years I've been working on my memoirs, a book. It's been finished,
Wonder if our names come up in that, Holly. I don't know.
Some but it's mostly about me.
Yeah,
okay. About how I came up and my experiences living in Southern Mass when I was a kid, and also my experiences in the blues milieu here in New England. Mm-hmm. And I finished it, was shopping around now for a publisher. Mm-hmm. If push comes to shove, I'll self-publish.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, have you come up with a working title yet?
Well, I have a title.
And it is?
Ain't No Uncle Tom in My Blues.
Ain't No Uncle Tom in My Blues. Okay. How did you come up with that title?
Well, unfortunately, the blues has gotten gentrified. It's gotten pretty much whitewashed, and a lot of the problem is a lot of black abandonment. It's a multifaceted problem. Mm-hmm. But, we could be here all afternoon talking about that. But so there's been a lot of black abandonment, and I've been really complaining about this for the last 50 years since I picked up the harmonica. Mm-hmm. But my idea is that, you got to keep the B in R&B. I believe the blues itself is the original BLM statement / soul music. Mm-hmm. So we as black people can't deny it, thinking it's, being ashamed of it. It's time to reclaim it, I think. It's time to be proud of it. Mm-hmm. So basically, when I picked up the harmonica way back over about 50 years ago, I was about 17, a lot of folks thought a lot of the home folks thought I was an Uncle Tom for trying to play it. I'm the furthest thing from an Uncle Tom. Mm-hmm. In fact, I recently was compared to Malcolm X when it comes to talking about the blues scene, but that's a whole nother matter. Mm-hmm. But basically, that's what my book is going to be about. Okay. I have still in the process of copyright, and but it should be out soon because it took a while to write it, a couple of years to write it.
I'm sure.
With some collaborators.
Sure. Let me bring Holly in for a second. Now, Holly, both of you have been in the music scene forever. You've been in the music scene for a long, long time.
True.
And each of you has seen the evolution and in some cases the decline of the blues, kind of piggybacking on what you said. Why don't you start off a little bit, and how have you seen the blues music scene over the years either evolve or decline or both?
Okay, I first want to say I really wanted Hugh to come on the show with me today,
yes.
Professor Harp. I really wanted him here because not only do we have a little history, but I know this book is coming out and he's worked so hard on it.
Yep.
And he's such an incredible talent and an underrated talent that we have here in the Boston area.
True.
And I have such
Well
respect
said.
for him. So I
Well
wanted
said.
him here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I first came on the scene maybe in the 80s, and at that point the Boston scene was very vibrant. There were
Right.
so many clubs, and Harper's Ferry, and Night Stage, and the Speakeasy, and
Paul's
Joe's
Mall,
Place, and
and
Paul's
all these
Mall,
places,
and Jazz
yeah.
Workshop. Fred Taylor, I
Yep,
really want to
Fred.
give a giant shout out to in so many ways. But the economy, the way of the world, I mean, it was really vibrant. And you could go to a lot of clubs any night of the week.
Right.
There weren't as many jams as there are now, but people were making a living.
Right.
And that's a whole different story. And then, 2008 happened, and the 90s happened, and a lot of things, occurred. People got older, they weren't going out as much, so clubs changed. So a lot of things occurred. I see a huge resurgence now. I really see. Maybe there's not as many venues, but there's a lot of support. And I think the country has gotten smaller.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and I think, certainly in rock, there's a lot more ego. For me, in blues, people are more of a community.
I agree.
There is a black and white issue, certainly here in the Northeast, but I think we are a community, and I feel very supported. I do feel that one time when I went to a club as the DJ, oh, here's the back room, would you like a drink? And then the next night I went as the musician. I used to play some bass and sing, oh yeah, it's over back there. I think there's a huge difference.
Okay.
But I do see a resurgence with smaller venues, and I think people need to support those smaller venues. And, the old adage about exposure, a lot of exposure. You don't need exposure. We need to support the musicians. People, do drive great lengths
Correct.
for short money, and I think that needs to change too. But certainly, it's the creative aspect. So I see a lot of positive because I'm into the positive.
Well, let's just drop a name. I mean, the first person who came to my mind about driving all over the place is look at our buddy Deacon Alexander.
Unbelievable.
The New England Blues Review. I mean, he lives out in Worcester, and he'll drive anywhere. He'll
Yeah,
go
he'll-
anywhere. I
yeah.
mean, 5, 6, 7 nights a week he's out there supporting the music.
You see him there with his hat
His
and
hat
his smile.
and that smile. I mean, he's a great guy. But Hugh, on the other side, talk a little bit about the evolution of the blues as to maybe where it was that 30, 40, 50 years ago when you started playing to where it is now, and maybe some of the changes that you notice. I know we talked a little bit in the past about, people play a lot of notes, people shred a lot, people, they get off on playing notes rather than rhythm, rather than blues, and rather than ear-catching stuff. So, talk a little bit about that as to what that progression or decline has been.
Well, you want me to tell it like it is?
Tell it like it is.
I mean,
just, just
I'm not
keep
going to sugarcoat it now.
Just keep it family friendly.
Right,
We don't
okay.
want to be shown at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, right. I try to restrain myself.
That's what we're here. This is public access, so
Right,
free speech supreme.
Well, myself, I haven't really been very well satisfied with it because the blues, they say, well, it's evolving. In a lot of ways, I think it's devolving.
In what ways?
Well, what's touted for blues now in most of the festivals all over the country and even locally is really rock blues.
Okay.
I mean, now I'm not saying rock and roll or soul or blues. I mean, roots rock and roll, gritty soul and blues, that's all in the same vein, fine. But I mean rock. Fuzz tones and, like you were saying, 8 million notes and, like volume on 10.
Right.
And a lot of people don't really know the traditional feels anymore. A lot of people don't have the feels to play it right. Very few guitar players know how to back up a harmonica player, for example.
Okay.
Very few people know the nuances because they don't listen. They just scratch the surface, whatever's, Southern blues rock or something. They'll listen to that and they never get any further some of the old masters, some of the old black masters and everything like that. So that's a problem. That's a problem, I think.
For me, if I just stayed here in New England, I would find it very shallow and unsatisfying. I do travel. I do go to New Orleans. I do go to Chicago. I do go to Clarkstown, Mississippi, which is a mecca,
Yeah.
and Memphis. And I need to do that. I need that mix of culture.
Yeah.
I can't just do
Absolutely.
faster, faster, louder, louder.
Right, exactly.
Right. So for me, it's a really important. If I'm going to be in this genre, which I have loved my whole life, I have to go to it.
Right.
You know, I have to go to it, and that's important for me.
Well, we all have mutual friends, and one of our good friends, several of our good friends, Soulbox, you're friends with Alana Katz, but
Great.
Aaron Harp,
Yeah.
and Nolan Late. They won the Boston Blues Challenge, and they all went
Absolutely.
down to Memphis. And Greg Miller's a really good friend of mine, Terry Schlegel,
Oh,
who
fabulous.
donned me the chapeau. I've talked with them about it, and I was talking with Greg Miller when he came back from Mississippi and Memphis, and he went to Muddy's. He stood at Muddy's too. He went to the Crossroads,
Right.
and they were saying that they will not be the same again. That feeling and that spirit just enters you.
Well, Clarksdale alone.
Yeah.
Ike Turner Jr. and Sam Cooke and Big Jack Johnson
Yeah.
and John Lee
playing
Hooker.
Oh yeah.
And the women that are now there and R.L. Boyce, all the music, you just feel it. And it wasn't innate in my culture, but growing up, my father played trumpet in a Baptist church, and on Sunday some mornings, and I would, what is this? And I wanted to draw the drum and bugle corps. And then you hear this music, and you think, where does it come? You have to say, where does it come from?
Oh.
And there's a sad history along with it, of course, terrible history. I'm reading some biographies now of Sam Cooke, and I'm reading a biography of Otis Redding, and the writer Jonathan Gould does one of them and brings in the history of Georgia and the South, and you have to know the background.
Oh, Jim Crow.
Jim
Yeah,
Crow.
absolutely.
And that's exactly where it's come from. I wrote the liner notes for Hugh's last
yeah.
release.
Awesome.
It's
You're
awesome.
the
You
only
have
one.
Well, it's wonderful. I have it here with me. It's a wonderful release. But he comes from the 360, the Gestalt experience of the blues,
Right.
right?
Well said.
So,
No, I mean, I've been, I go on these binges. I mean, a lot of it I owe to you because I might have heard something on your show, and I go and explore it. So I heard something on your station anyway, WUMB, Holly Harris Spinning the Blues, Saturday nights, tune in, is that I've been off on this Sister Rosetta Tharpe
oh yeah.
and
Oh, she's
Mahalia
great.
Jackson kick. And the difference that I feel listening to that music that goes back, some of it to the 30s
Yeah.
and to the 40s, is so powerful and moving. And then, I flip from that to, a modern day person. And although it may be great and rhythmic and I can tap my feet and dance, but I don't feel that same kind of, spirit that comes out of some of these roots, where all of this stuff evolved.
Absolutely.
That makes sense what I just
Well,
said?
yeah.
I didn't
Absolutely.
One
rehearse
thing,
that.
you have to have respect for the roots and the fruits.
Right.
I like
Right.
that.
And another thing, I've said many times, you have to have respect for the people that originated. And one phenomenon I have seen, you asking me how it's evolved or devolved or whatever. A lot of people treat the blues like it's just entertainment, and it's not. It's a history of a people. Now, I myself, I had to rediscover my roots. I was a Boston-born ex-Steve Urkel, although a serious Steve Urkel, which makes a universe of difference.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Right.
But I had to rediscover the roots. But I think that I believe that you have to have a respect for the music, and a lot of people who profess to be blues fans are like, Well, I'll tell it straight out. You know, they like black culture and music, but they're not really into black people, and you can't be that way.
That's an interesting thought.
I mean, you know, there are. I'll tell it straight out. There are a lot of rednecks in the blues scene, controlling the blues scene, and we have to go right back. And you know, I'd like to see more blacks, you know, reclaim the music, be proud of it. I mean, I can't. I don't have the technical knowledge to teach in the schools, but if I go to a black club, like say if I play over in the barbecue joint, Morel's over here in Stoughton,
Yeah.
I'll tell them, you know, I'll preach, say it's time to get the B back in R&B. So I do my part that way.
Absolutely.
You know, because frankly, somebody sold black people a bill of goods, and in today's political milieu, you know, the blues are as relevant as anything.
Absolutely.
The only difference is you don't have as many segregated public facilities, but the roots of the hate is still deep. It's been brought
very deep.
it's been brought to the surface with this new administration.
You know, the blues is the themes of universal life and love.
Right.
That's what it's
That
about.
too.
Right.
Well
and for
said.
me, it's very primal. And you have to allow yourself to feel. And I think it's very, very important to do that.
Well, some of these things that, you know, these songs you go back, like I said, with Sister Rosetta, and then
Yep.
and then you know, then you get into you know, Strange Fruit,
Yeah.
which all of a sudden,
oh yeah,
all of a
quite
sudden is
true.
making a comeback. You know, for some reason, that's kind of, I've heard that here, there, and everywhere.
Right.
And how can you not listen to that? I mean, not listen to it
Billie
and
Holiday.
feel it and
Strange
feel
Fruit,
it.
unfortunately, is still happening.
Exactly, and feel it. You know, you can't listen to it, whereas I think a differentiator, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a musician, is that, you know, there are times where you get, and you listen to music, but there's a big difference between listening to it than really understanding it
And hearing it.
and hearing it and feeling it. And I think that's where a lot of the changes that I've seen in music in general, music in general.
Music in general. I think that's why when I go to festivals, and sometimes there's a population at blues festivals, and in discussions, it's important to bring in the next generation and educate people on what's happening, and whether whoever is reclaiming it, whether blacks are reclaiming it, young people. I have the good fortune to work in the public schools up in Salem, and I, as a social worker, and I also can teach music, and I teach health, and sometimes I bring in like a B.B. King or Coco Taylor, and they start to laugh. Oh, look at the name Coco, or Mojo Slim, or whatever the names are. And I go, now listen to it. And some of them, you know, put rap to it. Doesn't matter. They're getting educated. They're getting educated. They're hearing it and actually enjoying it. You know, and I think it's important to bring in the kids, like Michaela, like the Tyler Morrises,
Yep.
like the young people who from any background, and keep this going. Quinn Sullivan and there's a young
Max
fellow.
Carpenter, you
Yes,
know.
but there's a wonderful young fellow named Kingfish Ingram.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Kingfish,
now we're talking.
he has a
Kid.
brand new release
Yep,
on
yep,
Alligator,
yep.
and he's touring with Buddy Guy. And when I first saw Kingfish, his mother was his manager, and he was down in Clarksdale, and very shy. Alana Katz played with him, and in Clarksdale, and bringing in another generation of kids. There's a fellow named Omar, a young boy from the streets of Clarksdale, and he's gonna, there's a lot of kids who really can come up with this.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue, because we've been getting a little bit heavy, but certainly enlightening. I think it's time that we lighten it up a little bit, because you two guys have collaborated a little bit.
We have
And you
collaborated.
guys are going to play a couple of tunes, right?
That's correct.
So, ladies and gentlemen, sit back and relax, because these two are going to blues it out for you for a little while. We'll be right back. That was freaking awesome.
Baby, please don't go. dog, I get you way down here. I make you walk alone. Turn your lamp down low. Turn your lamp down low. Turn your lamp down low. I love you all night long. Baby, please don't go. You know your man done gone. You know your man done gone. You know your man done gone down the county farm. They got a shackle on. Baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go. Got me a fine little woman. She like to hear me blow my horn. Won't you please blow your horn? Boy, blue. Won't you please blow your horn? You're a fine little woman, but I don't want to do you no wrong.
folks.
Cool. Well, I'm sure they had enjoyed it. But you've heard this before. You heard it the last time. The clock is not our friend on this show, so I think it's maybe time a little bit to give one more little plug to your book there, Hugh, and talk about the title and potentially when it might be coming out when you get that published.
Well, that's the X factor right now. Like I said earlier,
Publisher.
I'm looking around for a publisher. How soon that happens, I don't know. But if push comes to shove, I'm not going to let it go too long. Then I'll self-publish.
Right.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Ain't no Uncle Tom in my blues.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure you got some places that you'd like to plug. You play all over the place. I know you play the Sandbar. You had mentioned Morals over here in Stoughton.
Well,
you've got some gigs. Why don't you rattle off some of the places where you play and where people can get a hold of you, first of all? You have a website, and you have, how can people get a hold of you?
Go to www.professorharp.com.
We're going to have that up on the screen for people to see.
And all the contact information is there.
You know, this has been an absolute thrill. I am so glad that you finally came on.
me too.
Why don't you tell the folks at home how they can get a hold of you and, you know, how they can follow you?
Okay, thanks. I'm mostly I am on Facebook, Holly Harris, but WUMB.org or WUMB Saturday nights, 6 to 9 on the East Coast.
We'll put that up on the screen as well.
Thank you. And I have a new show that will be coming on board under Super Radio USA called Euro Jazz Plus, which is out of the Midwest. I'm voicing that Friday and Sunday nights. Hasn't quite kicked, but it's called Euro Jazz Plus. But mostly all blues, 6 to 9 on UMass Listener Supported Radio.
Yeah. Well, folks, you know, this has been an extra special treat today, having not only one, but two great individuals who are not only a great musician, but they are both great people. And they're two of the nicest people who I have the pleasure to know and to have seen and to associate with.
Oh, much
And
obliged.
3 Scorpios.
3 Scorpios.
3 Scorpios sitting together.
And as far as Holly goes, I mean, you know, there were times where you could probably turn on your toaster oven and Holly will be introducing the bread. I just thought of that. That was pretty good.
Thank you so much. Certainly we'll be doing the Marshfield Fair Festivals with John Hall in August.
Yeah, you're going to be all over the place. But once again, Hugh, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Obliged to
Holly,
you.
Thanks, Frank. You're
A
so
treat,
happy.
man. A
And
treat.
keep it up because it's really
A
great
treat.
and you're always so
A treat.
positive.
And let's not forget that we couldn't do this without our great award-winning director, Roxanne Morse. She's been right here for well over 100 shows, and I certainly couldn't do it without her. So Roxanne, thank you for your hard work today. And as always, folks, I want you to go out and support your local musicians. Go and see Hugh. Go to the events that Holly goes to. You might even see her whacking on those little bongos and djembes. You know, support your local musicians. There are many of them out there. So for Roxanne, for Hugh, for Holly, and everybody here at SMAC, I am Frank Walsh. Tune in and tune on.
That's good.